Hey, what's up, Liron here, and in this video we're going to paint this very simple ship with one main idea, and that is negative shapes and negative painting to bring out the details. So what we have here actually is this ship, some cliffs in the background, and the depth, the sense of depth and maybe the meaning of the painting and the composition is created by this contrast that is done negatively by leaving highlights. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so we have a scene here that I believe really demonstrates the beauty and simplicity. There aren't really a lot of elements here, but there is a strong focus on creating shapes negatively, in my opinion, especially when it comes to that highlight at the back of the ship. So let's start building upon that. Now, I want to show you how you can change some things around. I actually want to place the horizon line a little higher. So this is the horizon line, just a little higher. It's in the middle in the photo, but I'm going to change it. Now we have this cliff, and this is actually a scene I painted once. I actually sold a painting. That was nice. So we have this main cliff here that's the most visible to us. So it goes kind of like that, and it goes up at a very steep angle, which I love. Let's contrast it actually with the one at the back in just a moment. So we have this kind of a thing like that. Now we have another one coming from behind. Now let's again contrast these two shapes. So what's going to happen is, unlike here, the cliff more at the back is going to be a little longer and less steep. Okay, so I'm actually changing it up. And then imagine it continuing behind and then going up at a let's say flatter angle. So we get 1 and 2, and these create an interesting shape just due to the difference between them. Okay, now let's put in that ship. I'm going to start with a very simple shape. As you've seen, you know, the drawing, you really want to work from large to small. So this is the flat top part of the ship. Then moving towards the front, we have this thing here, which is the edge of it, and this is the bottom. And let's have it all the way around here. Get this kind of a thing going. We have this, I don't even know what that is, but if any of you know ships, you'll let me know. It has a bit of a reflection, or, you know, yeah, it's a reflection, not a shadow. And then on top, we have all of this construction here. That again, I have no idea what it is, but we don't need to know what it is in order to draw it. That's beauty. We have 1, 2, 3. Lots of highlights there at the back. And this will help us kind of create the illusion of the ship when it contrasts with the darker cliff behind it. Okay, and that's the key here to the painting. Look at the water. It's very similar to the sky in value. There aren't a lot of differences here aside from that lovely contrast. It's going to be a focal point. Now I do want to put in these smaller boats. So there's one here and another one right around here, just because it's nice. It's going to be nice to have not just this main focal point and the cliffs, but also some details around. But in any case, with that, we're ready to paint this. So let's start executing our plan here. What I feel like is necessary really is an initial wash that covers everything up but some of the highlights on the boat itself. And the beauty about these scenes is notice just how much everything is muted. So what I'm going to do is kind of mix here a neutral mixture. If you look at the sky, there is a bit of warmth to them. That could be due to my camera probably. But let's aim to perhaps capture some of that. So let's put in the sky a bit warm. I'm not even going to bother with wet and wet or anything like that. And I think this transition from warm to cool to the water is going to be responsible for a lot of the interest here. I'm just adding a touch of blue in here just to get this a little cooler around the right side. And again, I'm going to cover everything up. Okay, I'm going to cover the whole thing. There's no need to leave any highlights here. Now look at the top part of the boat. I can very easily just go like this. And you see I left some very random highlights. But I do want to be a little more organized perhaps. So let's add a bit of blue and then just start working on the water in the boat. I'm going to have to make sure I work just a little bit fast to have things not dry on me. But notice how with just a few small, simple shapes here, we can capture this highlight on the back end of the boat. And again, remember, we don't have to worry too much about, you know, missing something, because at the end of the day, we can add some opaque paint, you know, use a bit of white, perhaps our trusty white gel pen. So there are a lot of options. So don't get too stressed about leaving these highlights. And I actually love these highlights that I wasn't really meaning on leaving, but I guess they work for me. So I'm still striving to leave everything fairly light, because it's a light scene, really. We have this boat here in the foreground that we want to leave just a bit of a... so we'll move it because I messed it up. We want to leave just a bit of a trail behind it. So I'm just going to go like this. And perhaps just try and get it to look like an abstract shape. Sometimes it's hard for me without the drawing, and since I missed the part where it's drawn, here as well, I do want to leave a small highlight near the edge here. Again, you do the risk management. If dabbing and lifting won't ruin the wash too much, then maybe it's the right choice instead of waiting for it to dry and adding opaque paint. But again, you know, we don't have to worry about that kind of a thing too much. So now we've established most of what's important here, really. That initial wash. What you can do, because it's water, and you may want to just exploit the fact we're using watercolor. I'm just spraying some water to keep it a little wet, and then maybe just add a bit of a thing that will indicate texture of waves. Not texture, sorry, just motion in the water and waves, perhaps, okay? So I'm using still a very neutral color to get that, and because the paper is really wet, we'll get a very gradual transition here, you see? Which is good. It's really good for us. Especially near the boat where it leaves some ripples and perhaps there are some, you know... This is kind of like I heard Joseph Zbukvich say it and I liked it, kind of investment for the future. So in the next wash you can tell that it's water, or maybe there's a bit of movement in it. Now if you notice, the reflection of the boat in the water is very soft. So if we want to keep that soft, let's get it now in the initial wash. And I can actually barely see my drawing, but we'll do our best. So this goes like that, and then we have a reflection of this thing, whatever that is at the back. It may seem a little too strong right now, but don't worry, it's going to dry much lighter, and probably a lot of it is going to dissipate, so to speak. So let's add even a bit more pigment here. And the shadow under the boat, the reflection, a bit of a shadow under this boat, and the trail that it leaves after it, behind it, sorry. A bit of that here, a bit of a gentle trail here, and I think we're done. Let's let it dry and come back and see how we can turn this into something, because right now, again, it's just a big initial wash mess. So now that this one's fully dry and we did our kind of investment for the future, we can start putting in the different layers composing this. Now, I'm actually going to start with the farthest one, and it's a pretty muted layer. You can always use test paper if you want to test the value. That seems to me around what I'll need for the farthest mountain ridge. I'm just going to add a bit of coolness to it, and I think that's good. Don't worry if it looks too dark. Again, these things definitely go lighter when they dry. So I'm actually going to picture again where this line moves, and it goes around here. Okay, so that's the back cliff. And then it starts around here. Now I'm going to do something pretty fun, in my opinion. And I'm not going to wait for this to dry. Let's just add a bit more interest to it. And I'm just going to move on to the closer, darker one. So here I'm going to add a bit more red to the mix. Just a bit of yellow. And we can start indicating this one as well. A bit darker. You need this to be stronger. See, like this. And what happens is these two are going to blend together, and I'm fine with that, actually. I want that to happen. Okay, so here we go. I want these edges to be loose. But in order to make a better distinction between them, I will need to, again, darken this a little more. A bit more blue. And you see, like that. So hopefully one can tell the distinction between these two cliffs and see that they're two different ones. But the advantage of doing it this way and not letting one dry is that they do merge in many places, which just makes it a little simpler, makes the background a little simpler for the viewer. Okay, now I may have gone a little too dark here, but well, that's fine. So I'm gonna paint around the parts of the boat that intersect, and this is gonna be the really fun part here. I'm gonna make my way around these shapes, and remember, even at these small sizes, you do have to work sometimes relatively fast in order to keep the wash as fresh and beautiful as you can. So here we go. And you see how already there's a nice little feeling of contrast, if you will. I suppose something like that between the boat and the cliff. Now, what I do want to do is, remember, this cliff kind of goes towards us and it has a bit of a reflection under it. So I'm going to add that reflection in by just putting in a bit of a wetter area here and sort of dragging the cliff downwards with it, okay? I'm going to continue. Now I mixed a bit wetter and you see the gradual transition, okay? Now at this stage, the background's pretty much done. Hopefully it will dry a little lighter and will make a little more sense once it does. We can actually see a very far away kind of line here separating the sky and the water. I'm going to put that in very gently. I just dried the brush and now I'm coming back and kind of moving it around a bit, kind of like that. Okay, now this is too harsh of an edge, but coming back with water is going to mess it up, so I'm just going to do this. Just going to dab a bit of it, you see? And it's lost some of its strength, but we still get an indication of where the horizon line is. I could honestly ignore it, but I preferred putting it in at this stage. Now we're going to work on the boat that's closer to us. And again, you have to be a little careful because I can barely follow the lines I put here, but let's give it a try. Now we have to ask ourselves, do we want it to be of a different temperature, of a warmer temperature? Do we want to keep it as it is? Everything here is quite cool, to be honest, so I'm going to keep with the cool color scheme, but the value is actually a bit light. So I'm just going to get started. We'll see what we get here. So this is the front of the boat, and I definitely need to go a little darker, so a bit of everything really here, and also a bit of the blue, and we're good to go. So I'm just going to inject it back in here like that, top of the boat, and be sure to put in some, you know, at these small sizes you don't need much, but just some indication of details along the edges of your shapes, just to get it to look more real, more like that it's an actual object. You see, this is important. I'm going to get that in because especially the shape around is what people are going to notice, so you want to make sure that's interesting. And we have maybe the higher levels perhaps, so I'm just putting in some, improvising a lot of it, to be honest, but just a bit of details there. And along the bottom, going like that. And here's where the real beauty is going to start, with the back part. But before we get to that, we do have this thing here, kind of at the top, with a bit of a highlight, by the way, on its right side. So kind of like that. And it feels like a part of the boat, and these all feel like small details on the top of the boat. Now I do want to get in some wet and wet, so let's real fast just mix a bit of darker value here with all of my primary colors, so you can see it, it's outside the frame, and just get this shadow here at the bottom before this dries, and here also at the front. Here we go, just a bit of everything, and go like that, okay? Just to get that in while this is still wet, some of the details here. And I'm risking this edge drying, and me talking about it increases the odds that this edge will dry, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. And here I'll actually get a little closer to the edge because it's not that big of a, you know, I actually exaggerated it a bit, like so. And the boat continues, the ship, sorry, continues like that. All the way to the back, all the way to the right here. This is a nice little highlight. And you see how we can really hint at a lot of details without blatantly showing them. Now we're going to add a couple of shadows here. You see how these really bring out the highlights back, making them very interesting. And this connects, so that's a connected shadow. And a couple of details here and there, and we have this thing here. You see how it just gives off the right feeling. We look at the boat and it makes sense that it's a boat, despite really barely having any details here. Let's pull some of these darker lines out. You see how it gives off the feeling, that kind of impression or illusion of details, like that. And I think I'll try something interesting. I'm gonna just spray the bottom part, kind of helping the paint move, you see? Just let it blend into the water in whichever random fashion it does that. Let's just get rid of a bit of this here. And because we do have this reflection, I will help it kind of spread out here. This reflection, okay? Now we have a couple of boats to the sides. Let's get those in. So we have this boat like that, and the foam on the water surface, which is really nice, and a shadow under the foam. Here we have another boat like that. We can add more, honestly, if we want to, which we don't have to. And I think now we're just gonna let it dry for a while. One thing I did kind of mess up was I forgot to blend the cliff side here as well. It should go a little lower. Let me do that now, actually. Let's just go like this. It's not going to be as graceful as I'd want it to be, but it will hopefully get the work done. Get the job done, sorry. It's been a while since I talked while filming, so I'm not as good as I used to be in it, but hopefully I'll get better again. So now we're gonna let it dry and then come back and add some dry brush. So this is fully dry, and the trick here is not to overdo it in this stage. So what I want to do is add just a bit of dry brush here and there. What this does is a couple of things. First, it creates a sense of three-dimensionality and some, you could say depth depending on the case. That's the first thing. Now the second thing, it also directs the viewer's attention. So wherever I'm gonna put in these dry brushes, it's gonna pull the viewer's eyes towards. So what does that mean? That we have to avoid places we don't want the viewer to stop and look at. So, and by the way, you saw how long it took me just to mix this small bit of paint here. So we definitely don't want to touch these cliffs. I don't think we even need to touch these small boats because they're pretty clear. We'll only work on the main boat. Now let's start from the very darkest darks, and you really want to test it out, the dry brush. You see, if I work with the edge, just try a couple of times until you get that nice little texture going. And then once you do, this area in particular looks like it could use that, you see? So just to give a sense of, maybe it's the different floors, different windows too, you see? It doesn't have to be even dry brush, just darker spots here and there. Here we have this small stripe that's darker, that's really nice looking. We have this kind of a thing here. Very important, and a little stronger is this. There's like this cap on top here, and maybe a bit of a pattern there. Bottom, I do want to not fully indicate it, but just show some of it, because I still want this to feel like it's relatively merged together with the water in this case. Again, the magical word here is to not overdo it, okay? And this means we're pretty much done. I don't want to add much more than that. I think it looks good. It gives us some things to focus on. Let me remove the tape and we'll wrap it up real fast. So I want to thank you so much for watching, and once again, I hope you enjoyed this one. The concept of negative painting, I talk about it all the time, and it's just so crucial to being able to, I think, make good paintings. And it's something you want to practice. Even if you're painting abstract art, you want to always be aware of not only the shape you're creating, but by drawing or painting, but the shape you're leaving by not painting and not creating, okay? I hope that makes sense. I would really appreciate it if you share this video with someone you know will find it helpful. Drop a like and maybe a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. These things really help me reach more and more people, and I am trying to help as many people as I can. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in the next one real soon.